Hello, everyone, and welcome to ListenABLE. Back again for another fortnight with another episode, another guest, and we're actually doing something that a lot of people have been requesting. A lot of the guests that we've had, Dylan, on this podcast have been people with disabilities that are visual, yourself included.
hmm
But we keep getting messages about invisible disability.
Yeah, non-physical disabilities, and even things that aren't strictly like disabilities. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? So they and it's a line that I'm not even sure about. Like, what is a disability? What is a disease? You know, to me, it doesn't really matter, but for some people, it might how they identify. So it'll be really interesting today to talk to today's guest about where they sit on
Mm.
on what happens in their life. It's going to be really good, and I'll tell you what, she's very impressive. A little teaser reel that we both watched. Very exciting. So let's get into it.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on the show today. My name is Emmah Money and I am actually this year's Australian of the Year South Australian Local Hero. So that title I've earned very rightfully, I feel. I'm the ambassador for the Cure for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I do a lot of things, which I'm sure we're going to get into very soon.
Yeah, you're also an author and a mother, but people might have already picked up on what your disability is, which is...
Cystic fibrosis.
Now, first and foremost, before we get into that, is your last name really Money?
It is.
That
It's
is
money.
just the
I've
best.
heard it all.
That's the
I'm used
best
to
last
working
name. I love it. I've never met anyone with the last name.
Between that and power.
Yes,
Power's
Money and
another
power.
great...
So cystic fibrosis, is that?
Yes.
Do you classify that? Before we get into what that means, do you classify it as a disability or a disease, or where do you sit?
Yeah, so it's definitely a disease. It's a hereditary disease. But I think because of the effects of it being a disease, there are aspects of the disease that classify or, whatever rightfully terms it is a disability in its own way as well.
For people who don't know what cystic fibrosis is, can you tell us a little bit about the disease?
Sure. So cystic fibrosis primarily affects the lungs and digestive system. So people with CF have very thick, sticky mucus. So a simple cold could lead to a chest infection. Sadly, for me, I've seen many people go down the path of getting a cold and their lungs having been damaged, which have resulted in lung transplants. And for quite a few of my childhood friends, sadly, the illness has sort of beaten them and taken their life. And I always bring that up to sort of remind people of just how serious cystic fibrosis is. We may look very healthy and on the outside, but we're fighting a battlefield on the inside that no one knows about.
And that's where that invisible disease
Yeah,
kind of comes through. A lot of people, I mean, if they're watching socials and seeing you right now, you're a
yeah.
beautiful mum. You know what I'm saying? And
Thank you.
you're intelligent with it, but behind the scenes, you're dealing with a battle every single day. Your story's incredible. And can we go back to the start when you were diagnosed?
You saying that, I actually lost a mate to cystic fibrosis. His name was Warren, and he had the biggest muscles I've ever seen. He was ripped. He would smash 20 beers. Like I
Yeah,
didn't really understand cystic fibrosis, and then literally, like I woke up and got told on Facebook that he passed away in the night. Like I couldn't believe it
Mm.
because of how fit and healthy it was. You know what I mean? And I think it's as you said, it is a disease, that affects you in ways that you probably don't really notice for externally. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I a couple of times I might have been at a house party where I'm a big crook and he went home, but you don't think too much
Yeah,
about it. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And the next minute,
yeah.
so it can really affect you quickly as well.
Yeah, I think looks can be very deceiving. Never judge a book by its cover.
Uh,
Big thing.
what about with COVID? Where I mean, people within the disability community as well. We're talking about maybe needing to isolate further because they're more
Yeah,
susceptible with a lower immune system.
immunocompromised.
Yeah,
Exactly
exactly.
right.
So, how are you going? I mean, you're not in Melbourne. Dylan and I are. We're doing this via Zoom, so we couldn't be even more socially distanced if we tried. But how are you going with this, and the people in your community?
Well, for cystic fibrosis, I actually feel like I could be a bit lighthearted with it all. COVID restrictions for the rest of the world, having to social distance, wear a mask, use germ busters. That's my life. So it's finally a bit of, in my eyes, I'm trying to look at the positives in every bad situation. The rest of the world finally gets a bit of a taste of what life for cystic fibrosis people is.
Right.
You go to a supermarket, someone sneezes on their hands, touches a trolley, God only knows what bacterial infections you could catch. It just so happens that now, finally, here we are in the 20th, well, what are we, the 2020,
Mm.
people have clocked on to hygiene. So I actually I'm very lucky here in South Australia. We haven't been affected as badly as everyone else. So fingers crossed it stays that way. But I seem to be, as well as the rest of the CF community, staying very healthy because everyone else around us is being very cautious of germs and bugs. So
That's
we
interesting.
seem to be okay,
So
which is good.
that's good. So not to be doom and gloom, but if someone with CF was to catch COVID, it would be a
Yeah.
big problem.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I think, personally, I got influenza last year, and that can kill CF people. So COVID, it's a whole nother ball game. But I guess at the end of the day, I have seen some stories about some people in America, in the US, who have had COVID, who have CF, and they've come through. There's only one CF person I'm aware of in the States that, got COVID and passed away. But again, it's like anything. You've got to look at everyone's circumstances and their health compared to someone else's health. Very case by case, isn't it?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
We always kind of get a little bit of an understanding of a person's disability / disease at the start of this podcast, but then we like to go back to the start of their
Yes.
life with it. Can you take us back to a very young Emmah Money?
Yeah, well, I'm very crazy. So it's funny. All right. So in a nutshell, let's see how much I can give you in a nutshell. I was given up for adoption because of my illness. My biological family were new to Australia from Greece. So the average life expectancy, just to give you some facts for CF, is, roughly 37 years old. So that's a whole nother story that doesn't sit right with me. I'm not a carton of milk with a use by date. So when I was born, my birth family were told for me to survive childhood was probably the chances were not very high. So my birth parents made the decision to give me up for adoption. And that was because that was the right decision for them. They were new to Australia, not very much English background, if at all any. And if you even today Googled cystic fibrosis, it's very scary. So funnily enough, Dylan, you've always been someone that's been in my forefront of my head. And this might be why.
Hey.
Mum and Dad adopted me. I was only a couple of weeks old. I was born in October. And by Christmas, Mum and Dad had their first sort of day with me. And it was a year-long process until finally I was given to them. However, my dad is my inspiration. He is a paraplegic. He has currently, this is another story. I'll give you the snippet of it. During COVID, he was involved in in an accident, which resulted in him having to have his other leg amputated. So my whole life I've said, Dad's been my inspiration. He's got one leg, one hip, one leg, one hip, no kidneys. He's dialyzed many times a week. He represented Australia in the Seoul Paralympics and missed my first birthday. So they were going through the adoption process and then found out they had me, and Dad had to go off to Seoul.
What sport? What sport?
Weightlifting.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Powerlifting. Yeah. So you've been someone that's always been in our family, sort of, on our radar.
If you don't mind me asking, what happened? Why is your dad a paraplegic? What happened?
Yeah, so Dad's story is very amazing too. Dad was a victim of the white policy. So when he was 9 years old, unfortunately, he lived on Christmas Island. His mother actually beat him with a bamboo stick, and that was a form of child abuse, obviously. That resulted in him breaking his back. Now, it wasn't until the next morning he said he remembers walking home with a friend, because he was still walking at this point, and I say walking loosely, he was in a lot of pain. He collapsed. And he never walked again. Now, the white policy situation, I talk about that because at this point he still had legs and, just a broken back. But because he's a black man, he wasn't allowed to come to Australia for treatment. So he was sent to Singapore, where he was mistreated. The care for his injury was not the proper care. And that resulted in many issues for his life up until the age of 16. So it was when he was 16 years old. So you think he was a 9-year-old, had the accident from the age of 9 to 16, going back and forth to having treatment that was not really the right treatment. At the age of 16, he had to make a decision, and that was to either lose his life or his hip and leg. So Dad chose his hip and leg and had to learn to be a man again. And I always talk about him and my mum, because the journey that they had to adopt me, I'm very blessed. I see Dad with a very visible disability, and he has to dialyse 3 times a week. Otherwise, he won't be here the next day if he missed one day of it.
Can you talk about
And then-
what dialysing is, please?
What's that, sorry?
Can you tell us what dialysing is for a couple of people who wouldn't know?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know what dialysis is, it's basically a treatment where the patient goes into the hospital and spends anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. I'm sure that longer or shorter time frame. My dad spends 6 hours where he's hooked up to a machine and has blood flushing through his system because he obviously he doesn't have the usage of what our kidneys do. So
they're like computer kidneys. So you go in, they act as your kidney and then you get about 48 hours turnaround, then you got to do it again. So otherwise, so your kidneys flush out toxins and things like that and turns your blood around and things. So so for people that have kidney failure or hectic paraplegia where it affects your kidneys or whatever it is. Wow. Yeah. So what's your dad's name, by the way?
My dad's Arnie.
Arnie Money.
Oh, so good for a power lifter. Arnie, the power lifter.
I'm writing his name down in our to-do list on ListenABLE. He sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So
he's amazing. Yeah.
So you, what age did your biological parents know you have cystic fibrosis?
So cystic fibrosis, babies are tested at birth.
Oh.
So, and in Australia now, every baby is tested when they're born. So back then, when I was born, that was 87. There's a heel prick test you can do. For me, when a baby is born, they pass their first poo, a meconium, and it's like black tar. It's really gross. Now, my mum, I get what that poo looks like. However, I didn't pass that, and that is a sign of cystic fibrosis, a dead giveaway when a baby doesn't pass that. So I actually have a scar on my lower stomach from where they actually had to cut me open as a baby. And my mum remembers after adopting me for the first year, she said, you were very sick, not with CF lung problems as such, but it was my bowel issues because she said, it's very bizarre. She had to sit there for days and days, weeks and weeks, just wiping away the bowel movement that was coming outside my stomach. So not something I actually often really talk about, but that was probably my first year with mum and dad. But, I think what I was saying earlier is I've been set these amazing foundations of strength and courage and perseverance where I feel very blessed to continue going through my life and sort of see that, yes, I've got cystic fibrosis and there has been a lot of things, and we'll go into it, I'm sure now, that have happened, but you can't let a disability, whether that be visible or invisible, be a reason to fail. It shouldn't be an excuse. It should just be an interruption, which is exactly what it is.
Did you ever reach out to your biological parents or just ship them off?
No, I found them by accident here in Adelaide.
By accident? What, at the Malls Balls?
Adelaide. Nearly.
That's his one reference.
Adelaide reference.
Yes,
one reference.
Thank you. I'm done.
It's such a token thing for us here in Adelaide. They're not even that good. No. The pigs in the ball are better.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you that story?
Please. Where'd you? That's a weird coincidence.
Very, yeah. So this is a tale. So when I was about 16, I was out one evening. Now, I've known my whole life that I'm adopted. Like, my dad's black, I'm white. It's a dead giveaway. Yeah. And my mum and I do look quite similar, which is funny, but I've always known. They're very open, very supportive. So I've always known little snippets. Mums have articles about different things to do with my biological family. When I say articles, there was a death notice with my grandmother's name on it. Now, her name was actually my name that they called me. Now, they didn't actually call me Emmah. So I always knew snippets of information. And I always, you always want to know, I guess it's the unknown. But I was out one evening and I had a friend driving me and some girlfriends home. Now, this sounds very dodgy, but it really wasn't. It was a friend's friend driving me and a couple of girls home. Now, this boy kept looking at me in the revision mirror. I say boy loosely. He was probably 5 years older than me at the time. And I was a bit uncomfortable. And then I said, why do you keep staring at me? And he said, what are you doing out so late? And I said, well, and it kind of got very uncomfortable very quickly. The other friend said, she's fine, like, this is where we're taking her. It was about a 40-minute drive home. Anyway, kept looking at me in the revision mirror. Long story short, turned out this guy said I looked like someone he knew, asked me what nationality I was. I said, I'm Greek. So he said some Greek words to me and I said, I don't understand you. And he said, how do you call yourself a Greek if you can't speak it? I thought, all right, I'll just tell you the story. I was given up for adoption, blah, blah, blah. He slammed on the brakes, pulled over and could not believe what he'd just heard. he turns out, this is how small our world is,
Mm.
he was very good friends with my biological brother and remembers my biological brother having a baby sister die with cystic fibrosis. And I was her. And he thought I was my younger sister, who's 14 months younger than I am. So just to give you a bit of a snippet as to why he thought I had died, after I was given up for adoption, my birth father set up a phone call to my birth mother to tell her the baby had died. So since I'm now in my 30s, over this last couple of decades, I've learned that he knew all those years I was alive.
Wait, but
And
your mum, your biological dad told your biological mum that you died, so she didn't know.
Yeah, and
Shit.
to the point, I've only just learned, my brother, 4 years older than I am, he told me only late last year he remembers driving past a cemetery looking for my site. He remembers as a kid driving past with his mum every day, just looking for me.
Wow.
So you could imagine the shock when I rock up and I'm this crazy blonde, very in your face kind of person. Like, you're not going to forget me.
Yeah.
And very not your average. And I laugh wog girl. And in my eyes, it's the hairy, it's the what is the word? Stereotype. Exactly. I do talk a lot with my hands now. I'm saying that. That's very much embedded into my blood. So I found them. Long story short, if I fast forward to today, I went through a journey of finding them. I met them.
How'd your biological mum go?
Yeah.
When she realized you were alive?
It was very.
Were they still together? Your parents, your biological parents?
No.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry. Something came up and kind of blew up their world. I say that in a very nice way.
Yeah.
And would you believe it? I mean, when it all happened, I actually had just won a national magazine competition, Australian Teenage Girls competition. So I actually was given an opportunity and I wrote my autobiography, which was published, the words inside. I was 17 when it was published.
Nice plug.
And, well, it's sold out everywhere as far as I'm aware.
Great plug. Yep.
Sorry, but I do talk very openly and I look back. I was writing my journals and I talk about how I felt when I pulled down the driveway and there's my birth mum running out, screaming, looking at me, calling me the name they called me, not Emmah, and the relationship and how that all went down. So today I speak with my birth father. I don't speak with my birth mother or sister. I have a very close relationship with my birth father. He's very honest, like told me if they knew I was going to have CF, they would have aborted the pregnancy, which, give or take, people have over the years sort of kind of thought in a wrong way, well, he's a bad man and that whole situation. But I'm so grateful. I believe your eyes are put in the front of your head for a reason. If you're meant to look back, they'd be in the back of it. And I think that, if I hadn't have been given up for adoption, one, I wouldn't be here today. Mm-hmm. Two, there's no perfect ending to how meeting a biological family is ever going to turn out. And three, I have two beautiful parents who have given me so much more than just life. And that's all because I was chosen to be given up for adoption. And as my mum and dad always say, I was the chosen one in their house. So I'm going to keep going with that.
Now, your adoptive parents, including your father, Arnie,
yeah,
they chose you because you had your disease.
Yeah.
Can you take us through why they decided to choose a baby who had a life expectancy, and I'm using inverted commas?
Like an unhealthy, you're saying inverted commas, unhealthy baby, yeah.
Yeah. Funny, it's really funny. This is just a testament to the kind of people my parents are. They didn't actually want a child with CF to start with. They went through a special needs adoption course here in Adelaide, and that course took them through what it looked like to adopt a child or baby with a disability. And my mum's words always come to mind because she said, Dad, they met at a conference, right? I'll give you a bit of a background story because I do like to talk a lot. They met at a conference and my mum said the minute she met Dad, he was there as a Olympian and Mum was there with some patients. My mum's a nurse, so she was there with some patients. And she said she saw Dad from across the room and did not see anything but this beautiful man's eyes and this big infectious smile. She didn't see a wheelchair. She didn't see a disability. She saw my dad, Arnie. And
big cannons, big arms, surely, as well.
And big arms.
Yeah, he's a powerlifter.
Yeah. And he did have big arms back. So love at first sight. So they literally within a year got married and life started for them, right? So when I don't even know how they came to that decision that they wanted children, given that they had been together for, only a few years. But mum said they wanted to give a child the opportunity to live a normal, because let's be honest, what's normal anyway, but a normal life. And they already had to make adjustments, so to speak, for my dad's life. And they just wanted to do that for another baby or child. But then they came across CF, me, and there were apparently 5 other families who also wanted to adopt me.
Wow.
But I guess there's some people out there, that we need more people like that don't see people as a disability. And mum often tells me that, she remembers being in a mothers group, the first mothers group, with me having CF and a few other mums with CF babies. And they were all sobbing and they were all so sad that their baby had CF. And mum said something along the lines of, she remembers thinking she needs to celebrate CF because it's brought them to me. And it's never going to be a reason for me not to live a normal life. It's going to interrupt our lives, but we're going to live the best bloody life. And if anything, we're going to prove all of this wrong. So they're celebrating it, if anything. So
it's a testament. I'm sure you're the same as a parent now. I mean, we'll get to your kids soon, but like, my parents would go to play group and everyone's like, oh, you go up to my mum and say, you poor thing, are you okay? And my mum was like, bloody oath. Like, my kids are playgroup. Like, why would I not be okay? So it's changing that perception, isn't it?
Big time. And sadly, I think there's a lot of old school people. Even the other day, my daughter was getting out the car with my dad and mum was helping him get out the wheelchair. And mum said, Ava, my daughter said, Mum, everyone was staring at him and giving him funny looks. Why? And I thought, how do I answer that? And I said, oh, well, some people just want to be like him, trying to normalize it, but we should be normalizing things. And I guess that's people like yourself, Dylan, and probably me in some way that need to be that voice for other people to go, well, we're not different. Like, why? Don't make us stand out for wrongful reasons.
At the start, you said that the life expectancy for someone with CF is 37. You're 33. Like, I love 32.
32.
32. 32.
Yeah.
You're a dog. You're a dog.
Now I love the way you
Don't
put
look
it
at
that
David,
you're
25.
not. I love the way that you put it that you're not a bottle of milk. You don't have an expiration date. But as you get closer towards 37, is there some sort of apprehension and fear?
No. Well, there's the reality. Yeah, kind of. But then the actual reality is I'm planning a 40th in the Greek Islands. So I got a long time to go. I think I feel very lucky, over the years, I've watched many people pass away that have CF or that don't have CF. And I think you got to be positive. At the end of the day, your time is going to come and your time is going to come. I look at having CF and a use by date, so to speak, in the medical world as unfair. And to be honest, I would rather tell it where to go because I live my everyday busy. I do what I can to stay healthy, as we all do, but you can't help if you got hit by a car tomorrow. There are things that are going to be completely out of your control. The amount of people over the years that we've seen have some form of cancer that have just completely turned their families upside down. If anything, I think I've changed my mindset, especially since becoming a mum, that I have more of a reason to be here. And knowing that I have CF and that I can take the proper steps to be as healthy as I can, like being compliant, exercising, doing all of the things I know I can do, I think I'm going to be here for a while. I've got a big list.
Well, just on that expectancy of life again, do you know people who, or I'm sure you've read, people who have lived past 37? Can you live well beyond your years of 37 years old? Like, dogs, Labradors can live, on Wikipedia it says 11 years, but you've got 17-year-old Labradors out there in the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not to compare you to a dog.
No, it's funny you say Labrador. We've got a Labrador. So
there you go.
There. No, I don't know. I think at the end, there are definitely, I've met people over the years. One thing I'm really funny on, and again, I feel like the older a CF person gets, the more visible CF becomes. So in my voice, you can probably hear I'm a little bit husky. CF people have like the scungy voice because we're forever, clogged up, so to speak.
Maybe I have CF.
Dylan might need to get
I got the
diagnosed.
husky. Mine's husky as it gets.
You got to embrace it.
Mine's more gravelly than
Yeah,
husky.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I've got the gravel too. It's fine. But I definitely have seen people, probably more so people that have had lung transplants. And whilst a transplant is great, it gives you, it fixes a problem with a problem. I've seen anti-rejection and then people pass away. So, pardon me, I guess my biggest thing looking at older people, there's definitely a heap over in the States. Here in Australia, there probably isn't a huge amount of people probably over their 50s. But I remember when I was a kid, I always wanted to find, I never had a girl, a female that I could Google that had CF that I could look up to. And I say that in a funny way because I think, you can Google a CF male and there's definitely some really amazing men that are doing cool stuff out there and they're older. So for me, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be that old CF girl that people can Google in times to come. So that is doing good things. Google me for the right reasons, and see that I'm making a positive difference. So
For sure.
That's good. Obviously, COVID's, topical at the moment. Can I ask, at the moment, you got to clear your throat a lot because your CF makes you do that. How are you going walking around clearing your throat? Because I know when we're on radio,
we're so scared to cough or anything.
I was doing a bit on radio, and my throat got dry, and I was like, and Angus is like, no, because everyone's going to think you got coronavirus.
And then it's worse because you get the anxiety, you get really hot,
Yeah.
you're trying to cough back, and then you're like, oh my God, what's going on here?
And then you're like, don't worry, I've got CF, and everyone's like, what the hell's CF? It just
Then it's like, question. You're just like, just cough in the elbow, and it's like, you know what? It's funny you say about me clearing my throat. I've learned it's a very habitual.
Yeah, habitual. Yep.
Yep, that's it. And if I am consciously aware of it, I won't do it. But it's like if you're nervous, someone will sit there twiddling their thumbs or something. For me, kind of what I do.
Now, you have touched on a few times that you're a mother, which is awesome. Congratulations. We heard your little kid in the background before. Homeschool, is it? Oh, yep. And,
no, he's turned 5, so he's on the iPad.
Okay, very nice. So talk us through how your CF affected you whilst you... Well, actually, before we go into that, when did you decide to have kids? Because was there an added risk of having kids whilst having CF? I imagine there might have been.
Yeah. So literally one morning I woke up and a switch went on and it was my maternal switch and I wanted to be a mum. So I remember Googling stuff going, okay, cystic fibrosis, pregnancy, motherhood. There was absolutely nothing positive about it. First of all, why would you have a baby if you know you're not going to be around to see them grow up? Was the first big thing. And there was a lot around that. From a health perspective.
Before you go into health, can you touch on that? Like that would have been a big thing that's playing on your mind, I imagine.
Do you know, again, pardon me, here we go, that was not habitual. No, it did play on me, but then I also have my dad always in my forefront going, he's a cockroach. The amount of times we've nearly lost my dad over the years for different health reasons, there's no way I imagined my dad to be here still today. And I'm so grateful and blessed that he is. He's got a lot more to do. So I never looked at that. That shouldn't be a reason. And I feel like my idea about that and the way I see that, my perspective, I needed people to also be on that perspective. So that for me didn't dishearten me. It angered me. It was like, well, why? Why should that be a problem? If I know I'm healthy, and I say that again, if I'm doing everything to the best of my ability, why can't I bring a child into the world? So that was all fine. The health side of it, I had to look at my lung function to make sure I had enough lung capacity to hold a baby in my stomach and grow it, because as the baby grows, as I learned, push up on your lungs, which is actually a thing. So it was just also the post-pregnancy stuff. So not only getting pregnant, so men with CF are infertile.
And I didn't know that.
Like 80% of them or 100%?
About 85 to
Okay.
90%.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that as of recent times,
Yeah.
But a really
but
high percentage. Wow.
it's very high, unlikely. Like the men that have CF that I know that are fathers are IVF, all bar one, and there's not a heap of them.
Yep.
So that's very strong. So for women, it's very difficult to fall pregnant naturally. So lucky, my husband at the time, for a good 12 months, thought he was just getting very lucky at 1 week of the month every time. But I had other ideas and got very in tune with my body. And then very weirdly enough, okay, here we go. Here's another side story. As they all link into my world, I think when death means new life, right? If you dream about death, it means new life. Now, a really good friend of mine had passed away, and it literally had become quite an annual thing, going to funerals. And it was 2012, and we'd had her funeral on the Friday. It was the most awful funeral I'd ever been to. The next morning, I woke myself up from a dream that I'd had, and it was my girlfriend and all the other friends. And when I say all, about 10 of them that had passed away, all running along a sunset. No one had oxygen. No one was coughing. No one was hunched over. They were trying to get me to come with them, pulling me. I woke myself up because I said, I'm not ready, whacked my head, did a pregnancy test. It was positive. And that was the beginning of, oh, you're pregnant. I rang my mum. She was coincidentally away with all those parents of those kids that were in my dream, majority of them. Wow. So 6 of them, 7 of them. And I remember standing in Coles at the lolly section crying, going, I've done 15 pregnancy tests, Mum, and I'm definitely pregnant. So my pregnancy with my daughter, Ava, was the healthiest I've ever been in my entire CF life. My lung function was above normal, and, it was well over the percentage that it should have been or had ever been, which is a great thing, because there's a concern when you're pregnant with CF that you'll lose lung function. And the lung function is what we monitor on every 3 months, because when you start losing lung function, that's when your lung capacity is decreasing, and then slowly the deterioration comes. So that was really good. I was 38 weeks pregnant, still rocking high heel stilettos, had a very good natural birth. What people didn't warn me of was what life was after having a baby. So pregnancy was awesome. I had the time every day to do treatment 3 times a day, inhaled medication like nebulizers, antibiotics that were tablet form that were pregnancy safe, so I could take care of me. Then you have a baby and you forget, or you don't know, you have to become selfless because that little person relies on you. So it was a detriment to my health, but I breastfed Ava for 9 months. I was very skeletal skinny because of the pancreatic insufficiency. I struggled to gain weight. So I really, really struggled, but I was determined that, no, I'm going to give her my breast milk. It's a mum thing, I think, that you really want to try and do that for your babies. So I actually started CF Mummy, and I used that platform on social media to connect with other women who may have had CF and have babies themselves. But then I started to realize that it was actually kind of interesting to show people that this is what being a mum with CF looks like. It's not easy. And it was a good reminder for me to kind of jump on. So, I had her, went back to work, fell pregnant with my little boy, Logan, a couple of years later, and struggled with him quite a lot because I had a toddler that I was running around after I was working. My husband was great at the time, as supportive as much as he could. But yeah, then we had little Logie, and my health, I really struggled for probably a couple of years because I had the 2 young kids. I had postnatal depression, which I really didn't admit to until only a few years ago. So I didn't let anyone, with Ava, I didn't let anyone hold her for probably the first 12 weeks. I'd go crazy. Didn't like people touching her. But that came back to me going, I was given up for adoption. I wasn't wanted, and I didn't want people having my babies. So there's a lot of depth behind a lot of my things.
With the kids,
Yeah.
Is it hereditary? Can they get cystic fibrosis?
Yeah.
Have they got it?
Yeah. No, thank goodness.
So what's the chances of them getting it? Do you know?
Yeah, so when they meet someone, which is in a very, very long time, and have babies, they have a 1 in 4 chance. So they could get their partner tested for the CF gene, so you can have genetic testing.
Yep.
And then there's a 1 in 4 chance that the baby would have cystic
So,
fibrosis.
there was a 1 in 4 chance that your babies was going to have cystic fibrosis?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you take us through that process of weighing up the risks of being a mother and passing on this disease to your kids? Was that part of the conversation, or once that switch was flicked, there was just no chance you were going to go the other way?
Once the switch was on, to be honest, I didn't even look at anything or think like that. It was the day that I did so many tests and I'm like, oh, we're actually pregnant. Now we need to look at what this meant. So my husband was tested, had blood testing to see if he was a carrier, and he wasn't. So we knew the baby wouldn't have CF. What we did have come back, though, Ava was a 1 in 28 chance of having Down syndrome. And because it was such a high-risk pregnancy as it was, I didn't want to go and do further testing because I didn't want to have anything sort of maybe jeopardize the pregnancy and resulting of a miscarriage. But I knew she wouldn't have CF. But when we had that whole pregnancy, I had to consider that this baby might come out with a disability. And everyone was saying to me, Emma, you and Nick will be great with whatever you have. You know, you're strong, you've got CF, you can do this. And I remember a few times getting to a point where I thought, I don't want that. I'll be fine with it. And yes, of course, we'll be okay with it. But I have enough troubles as it is. I don't, want to have to try and be so strong for someone else when I can't always be that strength for me. But I got over that very quickly and thought, do you know what? God will give me, and we will have whatever we're meant to have, and we will make the best of that life that we're about to encounter on. And yeah, I guess I do know of another mum who's got CF with a child with CF herself, and it's a big struggle. There's a lot of cross infection that happens. So COVID related right now, the 1.5 social distancing, CF people aren't actually allowed within 5 feet of each other because of the cross infection. So I couldn't imagine having a child with CF and having to be always around that my child. Probably the biggest struggle for me is when my kids get sick.
Yeah. I was about to ask that. Imagine if they had CF, went to school, where everyone gets crook, and then bring it home.
Ava's first year of childcare, we ended up pulling both kids out in the end because it was just too much of a detriment to my health, and I had to make a decision. I actually had to stop working because whilst I look healthy, I was struggling. Of course, you can look healthy for a couple of hours. Anyone can put makeup and whatever on, you know. But
yeah, I've got a shitload on right now.
I thought you had a good bronzing line there.
Right.
You got a filter.
Exactly.
But definitely a concern. You just have to be, precautious and do the right things.
What about judgment from other people? For taking that risk, and also for being a mother with, the expiration date, as you say. There would surely be mothers out there who think it's selfish. And not mothers and fathers, and just people.
People, definitely. I think over the years, on that sentence, what you just said, over the years, and even still today, I'm learning to be very thick-skinned and tough. And you really can't let the opinion of others, be a reason for you to feel down or let them impact or influence how you make decisions, because no one knows what I do on a daily basis. You don't know what kind of mother I am. I lay with my kids every single night. I am very hands-on with my children. But even that, I don't even need to say that because I shouldn't have to justify what kind of mother I am to anyone. I know that I love my children and will give them the absolute best life possible to whatever ability I can, as any parent would do. So, again, like I said before, you never know what illness might strike you or when. My kids, Logie, my little boy today, said to me, Mum, can there be CF daddies because you're a CF mummy? And I said, well, there can be CF daddies. So it's funny now, my children, they're 5 and 7, are at an age where they're questioning what I do and my treatment, because they're obviously around when I take tablets and do all my nebulizers. So my job, if anything, comes back to what we were saying at the beginning, is I'm normalizing what everyone else sees different. So it's okay. And it's showing them it's okay to be different.
When did you decide to become an advocate? Because you obviously do great work in the space, but you obviously weren't
Yeah.
always doing that. So when did the switch flick to, want to help?
Yeah, probably year 11. So I was probably, end of year 11 for me. So maybe as a 15, 16-year-old, I didn't plan to finish high school because I got very sick and didn't see a future. It was end of year 11 that I won this national magazine competition. And all of these things sort of came to surface. And I realized my story is quite unique and it's helping other people. My attitude is, I hope, infectious, and I'm trying to be very positive, but I'm very real. So I realized that not everyone has the gift of the gab like me.
Mhm.
And I can make a choice. I can be powerful with that and make a difference in the lives of others, whether that be through inspiring them, raising money for the CF communities, or being a mentor to other girls or boys with cystic fibrosis or disability. So I learned very quickly, very young probably, that I'm going to make a change in this world. I'm going to leave my mark,
Good.
and that's what I'm doing.
Very nice. So what kind of, like, when you go advocate, so you obviously, I see you're an empowerment speaker and that, so that's obviously for everybody, but what kind of stuff specifically you do is the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation stuff that you do? What kind of work is
Mhm.
it?
So with the ambassador role that I have for the Cure for the CF
Yep.
Foundation, they support research, scientific research. So I go along. So there's many events that we go to. We'll talk about what research is happening, where they're at with the research. There's events that we go to. Basically, that foundation would not exist, as many charitable non-for-profits wouldn't exist without fundraising and supporters. So given that I believe that cystic fibrosis, CF, stands for Cure Found one day, I feel like the Cure for CF has aligned very well, and I'm very passionate about sharing the work they do. They fund different projects that go through an actual very big application checklist that it has to cover off so many boxes. And it's accountable. They're held accountable for the money. So when people donate to it, you actually can see where your money goes. I think it's $50 or $100 gives 45 minutes of research time. So it's very transparent and it's loud and it's, yeah. So I'm very big with that. That's also allowed me to go into different organizations as well and talk about the foundation, talk about my story, sort of bring that human contact and that human story behind, it's CF, it's an illness, it's a disease, but this is how it affects me and this is why we need to do this. And it's about doing that. So I really love that role. I'm very excited with that. I do lots of different things with it.
Good job.
Emma, we wrap up our podcast with a question called the Bowl of Uncomfortable. This is where someone from our socials will send us a question anonymously, or they can put their name to it. It's a question that they've maybe don't have the curiosity to know the answer to, but maybe don't have the courage to ask that person face to face. Sometimes it makes
Okay.
us feel uncomfortable to ask on that person's behalf, and this is no different. This one came from somebody online, and
Mhm.
she asked, "Have you thought about the life your kids will have when you pass?"
Ooh, that's a very good question. Yeah, I have. I Yeah, that's a very deep question.
Yeah.
But if I look back at there was a period of time when the kids were both very little, and I remember being on the couch and I had no energy, literally laying there. And I remember watching them running around, and I couldn't do it. And I thought, that was horrible. And that's probably the first one of two times I remember thinking, like, what if I wasn't here? How, would they be happy? What would they do? And I think what I've come to again think is that while I am here, I need to give them good memories and good life experiences and teach them good values and be a good mum, like I said before, to the best ability I can, so that if my time comes, and God, hope it's not because of CF, I hope it's old age and I die in my sleep. But if CF got to a point where I was there, me and their dad have sort of we've had probably one or two very uncomfortable conversations. I would never want my kids to see me the way I've seen some of my friends on a ventilator and not having had their life. But I guess if my time is to come, I would just want to make sure that I've given them the best life possible. And I guess to go a bit deeper, when I've had a few friends that have passed, there was a really good friend last year. I had to sit with him a day before he passed away, and it wasn't him in there when I was holding onto his hand, and it wasn't him. And I remember thinking he would have hated for people to see him like that. But when you get to that point in life where you're at an end, you kind of come to a point being content. It sounds horrible, but you're going to pass. And I've been around it enough to kind of go, yeah, you've got to accept it. And I think it's when you accept when you're in that situation that you can be still that comfort for others to know that you're okay with it. That's where you're about to go. So I don't really think about it too much. I can't, why think about that stuff? It definitely crossed my mind, but my kids are crazy. I just got to give them lots of love and encouragement, and not give them a reason to be afraid.
Beautiful bloody answer. And
That's amazing.
there's something about this podcast where people really open up. Like, that's a tough question, and we really appreciate the honesty about it. And tell you what, there's some lucky bloody kids because they got a beautiful mum. They're very lucky. And
I always think back to Steph Agnew. She's one of our previous guests who has a hereditary vision impairment, so she's blind.
Yep.
And we asked the same question. Did you, knowing that you're probably going to pass this on to your kids, her brothers have it, her mum has it, would you think about, having kids? And she has the most amazing answer. I actually go back and listen to it, and I recently re-edited the YouTube video for captions for her. It's online. And and she says, I realized that my life isn't less than somebody else's, and she lives a big life. She loves her life. She's got an incredible life. And so why shouldn't she be able to share that with somebody else and let her kids have the opportunity to have this life as well? And I always think back to that statement that she said, and I was like, it's so true.
It is so true. Yeah.
Hey, Emmah.
I don't know if I agree with you. I rap in the car really badly, and I'm always dancing, and they are so embarrassed by me.
I'll be proud of you on this podcast. Hey, Emmah, let's get you some money. Got to give us your email. Give us how do people get in touch with you.
Emmahmoney.com.
I know you do a lot of speaking.
I'm actually very good on my Instagram, believe it or not. CF Mummy.
I just followed. When you said that before, I just followed you. It's a good account. Got good stuff. You don't follow me back, to be honest. So
I'll follow you back. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm pretty fun about that.
I'm pretty raw and real on that. I get in trouble sometimes because, I'm learning to be unapologetically myself and walk that talk when I tell other people. But no, you can definitely jump on my on my Instagram, my website, emmahmoney.com. That's probably the best way. Get in touch. I'm always happy to, one of my big things is with my local hero status, I'm actually very busy at the moment going into schools across South Australia and doing my empowerment talks, running workshops with kids, which the energy, if you follow my CF Mummy, you'll see I post all about the kids, the feedback and the love that we get. It's just, if I could bottle up the energy and just sprinkle it all over, the world would be a better place, I reckon.
Well, make sure you mask up, Emmah, because we don't want to lose you.
No.
All right? So be careful in those schools. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your honesty. And make sure everyone, follow Emmah's journey and get her in because she's a bloody ledge doing some great stuff. As we said, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking. I've done most of the talking, let's be honest.
That's what we want. That's what we don't want to.
Hey, everyone knows.
Where does the vessel?
Everyone knows I was born with a tumour on my spine now. You can only tell it so many times.
Thanks again, Emmah.
Thanks, guys.